Todd Schuler, who's the audit manager of this engagement, and Amanda Messick over there handed out reports. She was on the audit staff for this engagement. We're going to go through the findings and the recommendations. We'll have some time for questions. We'll try to get those answered for you tonight. This audit is intended to be constructive and provide some guidance to improve the village governance. This is what we call a petition audit. We're here because the law makes us come here. When you have enough signatures from the citizens in the political subdivision and the signatures are certified by the election authority, we don't have a choice but to come and do the audit. We needed 200 signatures. That represents 15% of the voters who voted in the last governor's election. You actually had 222 verified signatures, so that's why we're here. We considered all of the concerns raised by the chief petitioner and others. Ultimately, the scope of our audit is in the direction of the auditor's office. If you'll look, and we often gloss across this, but the letter that Tom Schweik signs, which is a 2-page letter, and it's in the front, right behind the blue sheet, I think. What we do when we do these audits, we try to evaluate the internal control of the village, the subdivision. We evaluate the compliance with legal provisions, and we evaluate management practices. And then what we found, if you look on the next page, is we found failure to have a good internal control or to be compliant with all legal provisions or have good management practices. So all those things were found. The audit period was the year 2013. We do know pertinent issues arising after that date. Usually issues completed before that date are outside the scope of the audit, but things carry from year to year. We expended about 600 audit hours on this engagement. And if you sign the petition, if you look real close, you would have seen that there was a range cost of somewhere between $15,000 and $35,000. It's going to be close to about $27,500 is going to be the cost of the audit to the village. But we'll get some good news later to tell you about that. We found no evidence of fraud or theft. That's no absolute guarantee that it didn't occur, but we are not reporting any fraud in this engagement. Usually when I give these, and I give the findings and the recommendations, and then I say whether or not the officials of the political subdivision are going to implement, or whether they did not want to implement, if they agree or disagree. The good news here is we had 22 recommendations, and the city officials have agreed to implement each and every one of them, or already have. So I'm going to save my voice a little bit after I give you the recommendations. You just assume that the recommendation is going to be either has been implemented or will be implemented. And it actually is in your paperwork as well. Okay, we're going to go, I wanted to mention, of course, the rating. Tom Schweik has introduced sort of a rating, not sort of, a rating on all these audits, and the overall rating for this one is poor. That's the lowest rating we give. Poor, fair, good, excellent. This is the 33rd petition audit that this office has delivered in almost 4 years of Tom's term. Of those 33, 19 of them have been poor. So if there's any consolation, you're in the majority. But there were 10 fairs and 4 goods. You probably wouldn't expect to ever find an excellent in a petition audit, because there would probably be no citizens that would sign up if everybody thought everything was excellent. Under the specific findings, finding number 1 dealt with street repair and funding. The restricted street monies. The village streets are in poor condition. Village officials have not established a separate fund for restricted street monies and do not separately track and balance these restricted monies. During the 6 years ended in 2013, the village received $456,000 in motor vehicle related fees and $293,000 from sales tax. The Missouri Constitution restricts motor vehicle-related fees to road and street-related purposes, and it appears that the village intended to restrict the state sales tax revenue. After the residents are concerned, village officials prepared spreadsheets. After residents expressed concern, village officials prepared spreadsheets to show how these restricted revenues were spent. Only $213,000 in the disbursements were clearly street-related. The remaining $530,000 in disbursements were allocated to various village costs, some of which raise concerns and do not appear allowable and are reasonable. For example, 65% of salaries, fringe benefits, insurance, training, and other costs related to police department were allocated to these restricted revenues. That's improper. Our recommendation under 1.1 is determine the balance of restricted street monies, establish a separate fund or separate accounting for these monies, document any future allocation to this fund. Under 1.2 sales tax, the village did not retain the actual ballot language supporting the half-cent sales tax voted on during the April 6, 1999 election. And without this documentation, it is unclear what the voters actually approved, and this has led to debates among village officials and citizens regarding the proper use of these monies. Current village officials indicate they believe the board's intent at the time was not to restrict the tax or road improvements, but some village citizens contend they did vote on this for the tax because it was for street repairs. Todd tells me that the actual ballot language that was published, 1 week it was published
without the next week.
Without the restriction and
with 1 week none, 2 weeks in a row with.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 times, but they weren't all the same. Okay, so our recommendation under 1.2 is to seek a legal opinion regarding the restrictions on the use of the sales tax, solicit citizen input on the issue, and determine how these monies will be handled in the future, retain and preserve permanent records. Under 1.3, the street maintenance plan, the village has not developed a formal annual maintenance plan for village streets, and as of April of 2014, the city had selected an engineering firm to evaluate the condition of the roads and assess the improvements needed. So our recommendation there was establish a formal annual maintenance plan for village streets. Board will implement. Finding 2 deals with wastewater system. 2.1 covers loans. As of the end of 2013, the village had spent $150,000 in wastewater treatment plant disbursements from the general fund, but does not have a payment plan or time frame for repayment. This is another one of those restricted funds. You shouldn't use general revenue to take care of a restricted fund. So our recommendation under 2.1 is develop and implement a loan repayment schedule for amounts due to the general fund from the wastewater treatment plant fund. Under 2.2, construction disbursements and change orders, the village officials did not properly monitor wastewater treatment plant construction expenses, which resulted in a $25,664 overpayment for change orders number 5 and 6. The board did not approve change order number 3, totaling $146,455. Our recommendation under 2.2 was request the reimbursement of the overpayment to the construction contractor and ensure for future projects adequate monitoring is performed and documented and change orders are approved. The good news is, since the audit found that overpayment and the overpayment was requested to be returned to the village, it was. So the village is $25,664 better off because of the audit, almost enough to pay for the audit. That's the good news. Under 2.3, delinquent accounts, there's a significant amount of wastewater fees have not been collected, and delinquent account balances continue to grow monthly. The ordinance number 476 states the village will contact the provider to shut off service if bills become more than 30 days past due. The village has not initiated shut-off procedures or attempted to collect these delinquent amounts. And as of the end of January 2014, these accounts delinquent for over 30 days total over $116,000. Those include 174 of the 505 active accounts. That's 34% of the active accounts were delinquent over 30 days. And another 81 inactive accounts had delinquent balances totaling over $26,000. Our recommendation under 2.3 is to follow the ordinance, shut off procedures for delinquent wastewater accounts, establish policies and procedures regarding the collection of delinquent accounts. Under 2.4, restricted surcharge, the village has not established a separate fund for the restricted surcharge added to the wastewater bills, does not separately track the balance of these monies. By ordinance, the village adds a $10 surcharge to wastewater bills, which is imposed for the purpose of establishing an operations, maintenance, and replacement fund. Our recommendation under 2.4 is to determine the balance of that restricted wastewater monies fund, establish a separate fund or separate accounting for these dollars. Under finding 3, dealt with disbursements. Under written contracts, the village does not have a written contract with or charge a fee to the local fire protection district for services provided. By the way, you know, my remarks are a little dated, so when I say they don't do this and they don't do that, but then later on you find out they've been implemented and now they do this and do that, but my remarks are dated based upon what was happening as we left. The village clerk performs many accounting and administrative duties for the fire protection district, but the village pays the clerk's salary for time spent performing these duties, and the clerk does not track the amount of time spent on these duties. The village does not have a contract with the Andrew County Circuit Court to process the village's traffic tickets, does not have a contract with the mowing company. The village last had a written contract in place with its attorney through December of 2009, and the village spent almost $12,000 during 2013 for attorney services. Our recommendation under 3.1 is to enter into written agreements defining services provided and the benefits received. Under 3.2 bidding, the village has not always solicited bids as required by village ordinances. The village did not solicit bids for computers that cost $4,532, has used the same attorney for legal services for 25 years without conducting a competitive selection process. Our recommendation under 3.2 is solicit bids and proposals as required by village ordinances. Under board approval, the village has paid some disbursements electronically through its bank bill payment system without board approval. Our recommendation under 3.3 is ensure all invoices are reviewed and approved by the appropriate officials prior to payment. Under 3.4, supporting documentation, the village did not obtain adequate documentation to support some disbursements. The village reimburses the police chief $596 per month for the cost of his health insurance through his former employer because it is less expensive than the village provided insurance. But the village does not obtain any documentation other than a self-paid invoice from the police chief. And the village does not report these payments to the IRS as required. The village reimbursed the police chief $500 for the purchase of ammunition without any external documentation showing the purchase date or amount paid. The village gave a local homeowners association $2,500 for road repairs, but did not obtain documentation supporting the work performed or its completion. So our recommendation under 3.4 is to obtain adequate supporting documentation for all disbursements and properly report the police chief's health insurance reimbursements to the Internal Revenue Service. Under 3.5, duplicate payments, the village needs to improve procedures to prevent duplicate payments. The village received and paid 2 invoices for the same vehicle repair service. The vendor identified the error, issued a refund, and we did a little testing. For 3 of 30, that is 10% of the disbursements tested, the check number and our date paid was not noted on the invoice. Our recommendation under 3.5 is to adequately review all invoices, record the payment number and date on invoices. Under 3.6, late fees, finance charges, sales tax. The village clerk does not timely pay bills and ensure all vendors are notified of the village sales tax exemption status, resulting in unnecessary expenses. And for 2013, we identified 38 payments with late fees and financing charges totaling $175, and the village paid $1,968 in sales tax that should not have been paid had the village supplied the sales tax exemption certificates. Our recommendation under 3.6 is to pay the bills timely, make the vendors aware of the sales tax exempt status, attempt to recover any unnecessary sales tax paid. Under finding 4, the accounting records and procedures, 4.1 deals with segregation and oversight. The board is not segregating accounting duties, and there is not adequate independent oversight of the work performed by the village clerk. The village clerk is responsible for all record keeping and accounting functions and has access and authority to make electronic bill payments without adequate independent review of her work. Our recommendation under 4.1 is to segregate the duties to the extent possible and then perform documented supervisory review when you can't segregate the duties. Under 4.2, the village clerk's accounting records are inaccurate. Revenues of $44,376 and $54,404 were excluded from year-end finance reports. Some payments were not recorded, others were recorded in the wrong fund, and one $758 payment was incorrectly recorded as $576. Our recommendation under 4.2 is to maintain accurate accounting records. Under 4.3, bank reconciliations. The village clerk does not perform bank reconciliations for any of the village's 6 bank accounts. It does not maintain a running balance for these accounts. Our recommendation is to prepare those monthly bank reconciliations for all the accounts and maintain running checkbook balances. Under 4.4, credit cards. The village has 1 creded card account with cards issued to 2 employees and the board chairman, but there's no independent review of credit card statements or supporting documentation to ensure that the purchases are reasonable and for village purposes. Recommendation: review the credit card usage and maintain adequate documentation and reconcile it to the village statements. Under 4.5, receipting and depositing procedures. The receipt slips are not always issued for payments received and do not document the composition of the receipts. When we say the composition, it doesn't say whether it was a check, a money order, cash, whatever. The composition of those receipts is not reconciled to the composition of the deposits, and the receipts are not always deposited timely. So our recommendation there is issue a receipt slip for every dollar collected, account for the numerical sequence of these receipt slips, document the composition of the receipts and reconcile it to the composition of the deposits, and ensure that the receipts are timely posted to the accounting system and deposited timely. Under finding 5, to deal with budgets, the 2014 and 2013 budgets did not contain a budget message. The actual receipts and disbursements for the 2 preceding years are amounts related to the debt of the village, and they did not include beginning available resources and estimated ending available resources. The village did not prepare a budget for the wastewater treatment plant fund in 2013 and in 2014, it was included in the general fund budget. The village officials did not hold a public hearing to obtain resident input for the 2014 and 2013 budgets. So our recommendation under finding 5 budget is to prepare a complete budget document for all village funds, hold a public hearing to obtain input from the village residents. Finding 6 has 3 parts, and it's the final finding. It deals with meeting minutes and compliance with ordinances and sunshine law. We noted that weaknesses exist in the documentation of minutes for board and committee meetings. The minutes inaccurately recorded the number of votes in several instances and do not document a vote when a bill was introduced to change workers' comp insurance companies. In July of 2013, board meeting minutes list the monthly bills to be paid, but there's no motion or vote recorded to approve the payment of those bills. No vote was recorded for the bill introduced and accepted to amend the sewer rate charge. And in 2 instances, the board secretary or a board member did not sign the meeting minutes, and no one prepared minutes for some committee meetings. So our recommendation under 6.1 is to maintain complete and accurate minutes for all open meetings. Under 6.2, which deals with closed meetings, the board discussed and voted on topics in closed meetings which are not allowable under the sunshine law, and did not subsequently disclose matters in open meetings as required. In closed meetings, the board voted to change the village hall office hours, approved the settlement agreement to terminate an employee, but did not make either vote public. In a closed meeting, the board approved the pay increase for a police officer, retroactively recognized the police chief as a full-time employee, but there was no documented discussion of personal information which would have necessitated a closed meeting. So our recommendations under 6.2 is to ensure meeting minutes publicly disclose the final disposition of applicable matters discussed in closed meetings and only discuss allowable topics in closed meetings. Under 6.3 ordinances, village ordinances are not complete and organized. The village has not adopted ordinances regarding the village clerk's job responsibilities, compensation, etc., as required by Chapter 80.240 RSMO. The ordinances are not maintained in a file folder, and there is no up-to-date official ordinance book and no index of all ordinances passed and rescinded. So our recommendation under 6.3 is to establish certain official duties and compensation by ordinance, maintain the ordinances in a complete, well-organized, up-to-date manner, pass new ordinances when appropriate, and establish an index of all ordinances passed and rescinded. Those are the findings. As I said at the beginning, all those findings have been accepted, implemented, have been implemented, or being implemented. One of the things Tom Schweik has introduced to the auditor's office when he came in was what he calls a follow-up report. Whenever a poor grade is given to an audit, it's a practice of the office to come back in about 90 to 120 days and see whether or not those recommendations have been implemented. We don't take everyone's word for everything. So we will be back, not to tell you exactly when, the officials will find out about it. We'll come back in 3 to 4 months. We'll issue a follow-up report. The follow-up report will have a number on it just like this one. This is number 2014-105. The next one, the follow-up is going to be a 2015- fill in the blank. That's the 105th report issued this year. We issue about 150. It's 105th one. We actually issue about 140, 150 a year. If you misplace the one you have and you you want to go back and find it, you can go to auditor.mo.gov and click around and under petition audits, or you can search under village of, and it'll pop up there with the citizen summary, and later on the follow-up report there as well. I'd be happy to take some questions, and I'll ask Tom maybe to answer, help me answer some. Yes, sir.